It's a big day at the Spaceflight Control Center. Cosmonaut Alexander Chapayev is leading a historical trip to Mars. It's the first manned mission to our red neighbor, which means the whole world is watching when they're about to reach the destination. Suddenly, a meteor shower knocks the ship off course, sending it right into a nasty storm. From Earth, Commander Kovalyov immediately activates the emergency protocol. As the ship is pretty much doomed to crash now, the 4 astronauts are instructed to get into the detachable module and just leave the rest behind. But they soon find out that even this Plan B is compromised by the extensive damage. The only way to detach the module now is manually, and it must be done from the main ship, which means at least one person won't be coming home. Honoring his duty as the captain, Alexander volunteers to be that person. The module is detached successfully, and the rest of the crew is on their way back. But Kovalyov is extremely distressed to learn about Alexander's fate. They are very close friends, having known each other since they were kids. It seems like that it was only yesterday that Kovalyov was announcing their adventure on TV in a cheerful interview where he explained their shared dream to explore space. Now he has the gloomy task to conduct a very different press conference, informing the world that Alexander Chapayev is dead. But it turns out that his friend can surprise him even from space. His speech is interrupted by a direct transmission from Mars. Alexander has miraculously survived the crash. Everyone gathers to watch his message. Kovalyov is relieved to see him unharmed and begins to plan the rescue right away. A special mission to retrieve Alexander needs to start as soon as possible, and the first step is to get it approved. Sadly, that involves talking to Minister Rogachev, who is not as worried about Alexander's survival as he is about the budget. And it's not like they're expecting any additional funds after this fiasco. Kovalyov desperately tries to find some shred of empathy in this man, to no avail. Rogachev agrees to send something eventually, but they can't speed up the process. It's just too expensive. That's when we meet Grisha. He is a TV personality who has nothing to do with rocket science. All he has is a crazy idea, but he manages to convince the network's CEO, and even Kovalyov agrees to hear it. Grisha wants to launch a reality show with Alexander as the main star. A chance to broadcast the daily struggles of a stranded astronaut is just too good to miss. And it's not like Alexander has somewhere else to be every night. Kovalyov is simply appalled to hear that. His friend is in real danger, and these guys are planning to turn it into a complete circus. Grisha doesn't even bother to deny that. He tells him that a media circus is highly profitable, and the CEO has agreed to invest the money on the rescue mission. Well, the commander is now extremely conflicted about the idea, and it doesn't help that Grisha acts and talks like a greedy bastard. But in the end, he's forced to give in. Alexander's safety has to come first. So, while Grisha begins to set up the horrid show, Kovalyov gets busy with the rescue mission. It's not long before he gets more bad news from Mars. While the provisions on the ship were enough for the whole crew, the amount was calculated for a much shorter stay. And to make things worse, most of it was destroyed in the crash. That gives them 13 months to save Alexander before he starves. And even that will require some serious rationing. And of course, that's not the only problem. Long periods of isolation can mess up your mind, even in a familiar place, let alone on Mars. Well, at least you won't have to paint a face on a volleyball and call it Wilson. There's a little robot that's still functioning. With nothing better to do, Alexander sends it to explore the surroundings. A few hours later, the robot picks up a strange signal near the crash site, and it's unable to determine the source. Right after that, Alexander gets to virtually meet his new therapist, Anna. Brought into the project in an effort to minimize the ordeal, she promises to be there for him every step of the way. He tells her that everything's just fine and there's nothing weird happening. No need to mention that creepy signal dangerously near and completely unaccounted for, right? A few days later, Grisha is ready to get this party started. But first, he makes sure to have a little chat with the astronaut to clarify a few points. This is no science class, so forget about boring facts. Also, keep in mind that the real star of this show is the host, which is Grisha himself, of course. Alexander completely ignores these instructions. He interrupts Grisha at the first opportunity and begins to tell his own story. Everyone is delighted to hear a first-hand account of wild space adventures. The audience is simply fascinated by his intrepid spirit, and the show becomes a huge hit in no time. Not used to sharing the spotlight, Grisha is so upset that he takes it up to his boss. He tries to convince him that people will soon lose interest in all that Milky Way stuff. They should just cancel this show and cut their losses. But the CEO then reveals his true vision. He never believed in the rescue mission at all. He thinks Alexander doesn't stand a chance, and that's what makes the show unique. It's also why it must go on. People just love a good disaster. Speaking of disaster, the weird signal keeps coming back, and Alexander decides to talk to Piotr, the communication specialist. What he doesn't know is that Piotr is also Anna's fiancé, and a very immature guy. He's been getting progressively jealous of her and upset at all the time she spends talking to the astronaut. Does he not know how therapy works? Anyway, Alexander's sudden popularity all over the world makes him even more bitter about it and unwilling to help him out. Imagine how thrilled that CEO would be if he knew about all this drama. And where is Kovalyov during all this mess? Dealing with another one, of course. He has just learned that the transmissions are consuming too much power on the Mars end. That could drastically shorten their deadline, so he talks to the network CEO about reducing the airtime. Oh, this man's not only stubborn, but very persuasive. He says more exposure means more cash, and more cash means a faster rescue. Kovalyov is so easily duped that he ends the call determined to increase the transmissions, which is exactly the opposite of what he wanted. Anna is appalled to find out about that, but nobody pays attention to her concerns. By now, she suspects that her patient is not telling her everything. And we know she's right. Alexander is constantly plagued by unexplained noises all around. The phenomena is getting too intense now, and he won't be able to keep hiding for much longer. One day, he has a terrible headache that goes away as suddenly as it started. And then, a voice is heard. Alexander recognizes it immediately. It's his mother's voice. After the questionable decision of lying to his therapist all this time, Alexander finally decides to tell the truth. Except he doesn't tell just Anna or Kovalyov. He tells the whole world. A group of children are on the show tonight, and they ask him about strange things that happen in space. Well, the poor little fellows are surely expecting to hear about floating pencils and stuff like that. But Alexander flat out tells them that we are not alone. Or at least he is not alone on Mars. Something has been trying to contact him since his arrival. Well, that surely raises a little more than eyebrows, both at the network and the flight control. Anna is rushed into an emergency session with the rogue poster boy. It goes much worse than she expected. Alexander is ready to take back the alien talk, but only to replace it with something even more bizarre. He is now convinced that nothing truly exists. Everything we see is a figment of our imagination, even the planets. A chunky figment, for sure, but still our creation. It's hard to see it on Earth, though. 8 billion people generating parts of the reality around them at the same time is bound to get complex. He can only see it now because he has an entire planet for himself. His mind created that strange signal, as well as the other incidents. They are real now, but only because he made them so. What a nice chat. Now, Anna is 100% sure that he lost his mind. She is forced to report her assessment, and everyone begins to treat him as a lunatic. So he decides to stop talking to her. When Piotr tries to tell her that he's now actually detected something unusual up there, she's too frustrated to listen. In the evening, Alexander doesn't show up for the broadcast. Both Anna and Kovalyov get instantly worried. They try to contact him with no success. The only person who seems calm about it is the CEO, which is not suspicious at all. 2 days later, Alexander is back to prime time, to everyone's surprise. He seems a little different, though. His natural charm is gone, and he's talking like a contrived showman, and it's not only his manner that seems transformed. The topic is also a bit surprising. Ignoring all the questions about Mars, he begins to talk about the upcoming elections, categorically endorsing Minister Rogachev. Suspecting some kind of foul play, Anna decides to corner her worse half, Pyotr. He tells her that all communications with Mars have been shut down. There's no way to contact the astronaut anymore. What about the guy on TV? Pyotr doesn't know who that is, but it can't be Alexander. Anna is not the only one to have an awful surprise. When Kovalyov asks the minister for updates on the rescue mission, he is shocked to hear that all the money is mysteriously gone. Rogachev also takes the opportunity to inform Kovalyov that he is fired. Back on Earth, special forces interrupt the show to reveal that Grisha had been using CGI to impersonate Alexander. Rogachev and the CEO were also part of the scam, and they are all going down. Embarrassed by the whole mess, the Russian authorities decide to bury everything, including the real parts. They tell the public that the entire mission was a hoax, and there's no Russian ship on Mars at all. Realizing that it means he'll never see his friend again, Kovalyov breaks into his former workplace and contacts Alexander. He has at least the right to know why he is being abandoned. Kovalyov apologizes for the Earthlings in general and says goodbye. A few moments later, American satellites pick up a huge explosion on the surface of Mars. That was Alexander's way to debunk the second farce, as it becomes obvious that the ship was real. Having accepted his fate now, Alexander decides to dissolve the illusion by merging back into the universe. He has learned that everything is a product of the human mind, but he has just seen what a human mind is capable of. And that's a wrap. Make sure to check out more of our sci-fi recaps. And as always, thank you for watching.